Zen is a state of calm attentiveness in which one's actions are guided by intuition rather than by conscious effort. The techniques of Zen practice aim toward enlightenment, which is said to take place when our mind-heart moves past selfishness and excessive reasoning into a state of consciousness that is intuitive, spontaneous, fearless, and loving. Are you ready to accept nothingness, to free yourself from the tangible and illusory bonds of the physical world, and tap into the unseen fabric of life as you follow the path to enlightenment? Die, you motherfucker! Hello, hi, I'm TechDweeb. Welcome. Thanks for clicking on the video today. This is the Asus ZenBook. Not to be confused with this ZenBook. If you want a laptop, don't mistakenly order this, or you'll be waiting for your laptop to arrive and then you open it and it's a book and you'll be super angry until you read it, I guess. And then your heart and mind would enter into a state of acceptance with the universe, and then you would no longer crave material possessions like Asus ZenBooks. But for those of us who would not rather give up shiny laptops in exchange for inner peace, we have the Asus ZenBook, a sleek, shiny, beautiful device with an amazing OLED screen, thin, lightweight profile, enough power to do some seriously impressive feats of computing, including games, and while it probably won't aid you on your path to enlightenment, it will certainly make your daily grind a lot more stylish. This is the first laptop of Asus's that I've reviewed. They sent this to me to check out and to show you guys, and I'm kinda sad because I don't get to keep this. I have to return it, and I'm gutted because I love it. How the heck am I gonna find inner peace once I give this thing back? Damn it. In my mind, this thing is the picture of modern sophistication. It might not guide you to nirvana, but it will undoubtedly elevate your tech game to new heights. As you can see, the box is pretty plain. Around back, we have our specs. We'll talk about the specs in a bit. Opening the box, they have this cool mechanism in there. Basically, the laptop lifts up when you open the lid, almost like magic. The magic of cardboard origami. In here, it looks like we have a USB-C charging adapter. My intuition tells me that this is a 65-watt adapter. I just have a hunch. And here's the laptop. It really does make a good first impression. It's nice and thin, nice spacious keyboard. It definitely has a premium feel to it. And when you boot it up, you'll have a very standard Windows 11 setup. And then the setup finishes nice and quick, and we're in Windows. And that's the end of the unboxing, so let's move on to the specs. This Asus ZenBook 14 OLED has a Intel Core Ultra 7 155H processor with integrated Iris Xe graphics, and also an integrated Intel AI Boost NPU for all that AI stuff that everyone feels like they need, but no one is actually using. We also get 16 gigabytes of onboard dual-channel LPDDR5X RAM, clocked at 7,467 megahertz. We also get 1 terabyte of NVMe internal storage, Wi-Fi 6E, and Bluetooth 5.3, and a 75 watt-hour battery. And of course, we get a beautiful 14-inch OLED display. 2880 by 1800, 16 by 10 aspect ratio, 0.2 milliseconds response time, 500 nits HDR peak brightness, and 100% DCI-P3 color gamut coverage. The whole thing is very thin and light. It's 17 millimeters slim and weighs 1.4 kilograms. Definitely no problem to carry it around with you. The exterior of the laptop is kinda neat, I guess. It's got a matte texture to it, and it's sort of a very dark grayish blue, and they have these glossy accent lines in this kind of angular abstract pattern. Underneath, we have some rubber strips that act as feet, and these stick out a decent amount, so we should get some good airflow, which is important because this is a pretty powerful device, and that fan does get going when you're pushing it. For I/O, on the left side, we have a single 5 gigabit USB-A hole, and on the right side, we have dual USB-C holes rated for Thunderbolt 4, and a headphone hole, and we have a full-sized HDMI hole. Inside, we have a nice, spacious 60% keyboard. We have some function buttons up at the top, brightness, volume, microphone, keyboard, backlight. The feel of the keys is all right. They feel kind of plasticky with no real click, and they have a definite membrane feel to them, and they're a bit on the stiff side, but they're totally usable, and the actual size of the keys of the keyboard is perfect. We have a very big trackpad, which I like to see, and this is cool. One thing that Asus often does with their trackpads is to turn them into a numpad, and it works surprisingly well once you get used to it. And we get a pretty standard crappy 1080p webcam, but it does have a physical toggle switch, which is nice for privacy or whatever. The screen is probably the best part about this thing. Like I said, it's a 14-inch 1800p display, but it's OLED, which means that you're gonna get perfect dark blacks that are actually black, and bright colorful lights and wonderful saturated colors. And it's 120 Hz with adaptive sync, so you'll have smooth motion for everything that you do. And that's great for gaming, of course, because you get very smooth, consistent frame pacing. The sound is also really nice on here. I'm not an audio guy. I don't have the words to explain this stuff. It's great. It's probably the best sound that I've ever heard from a laptop. The system that we have on here is Windows 11 Home. Of course, there's bloatware. There's the usual Microsoft crap, and Asus has a bunch of stuff. And then there's a few other pieces of software, including, yep, you guessed it, McAfee Antivirus. So you'll probably just want to uninstall a ton of stuff right away, especially McAfee, because you don't need it, and it's really just a scam at this point, to be honest. One piece of software that's nice to have is the My Asus software. You get some basic info about your device, and you can change some stuff like the fan profile or the VRAM allocation, and you can turn on some stuff to prevent burn-in on the OLED display. I honestly like having this just for the fan and the GPU stuff. This is not a bad piece of software, but the rest of the bloat can go straight to hell. And I ran a few quick benchmarks for you benchmarky dweebs. For Cinebench R23, which tests raw CPU horsepower, we got a multi-core score of 12,555. So that's actually really great general performance for a laptop. In 3D Mark Time Spy, which tests graphics and gaming potential, we get an overall score of 2,945. And in Crystal Disk Mark, we get these results. And if you know what these mean, then yeah, these are the results. This thing has a 75 watt-hour battery, which is pretty big. On my first day with this thing, I was installing games and playing games with the screen all the way up, and it lasted about 6.5 hours. But on my second day, I had the screen dimmer, and I was using it to browse the web, watch the new Fallout TV show, and write this script, and it actually lasted all day long and a couple hours of the next day. Probably about 14 or 15 hours total. So if you're just using it for regular stuff, you'll get an all-day battery here. Not for gaming though, obviously. And speaking of which, it's time to talk about the gaming. And there's a bit to talk about here. So the Core 7 155H processor that we have in here is the same one that we have on the MSI Claw. Obviously, the lightweight stuff is gonna run fine, and they will look amazing on this OLED display. Any game that has lots of darks and blacks really shines on an OLED because those blacks on the screen are actually black. This is one of the nicest screens that I've ever seen, to be honest. Any game that you can get to play will look amazing on here. This is a new game that I've been playing. It's called Buckshot Roulette. It's got a super creepy vibe to it and a really cool art, and it's just a unique, interesting experience kind of game. And here's Turbo Overkill. This looks like a low-spec game, but it's pretty demanding. I like this game to run at as high an FPS as I can get, so I went with the low settings and 1680 by 1050 resolution. And the game ran buttery smooth. It's situations like this where the adaptive sync that we have on the display can really be felt. Older games obviously are going to be no problem. Here in Skyrim Special Edition, I'm playing at 1050p high settings, and I got 55 FPS by the end of my session. So not mind-blowingly amazing, but totally playable. I had a really nice Crusader Kings 3 session on here. I'm doing a Norse run. I'm playing as Finland. The game started and I was in a conquest war with Vodi, but they were at war with someone else, so I let their war dry up and then I bailed on my conquest. Meanwhile, I'm trying to get some more heirs, so I tried to seduce my wife and make her get all lusty with me. We had another baby and I named him Russ from Retro Game Corps. Grow strong, little Russ. The fate of the Finnish Empire is in your future. And then I moved on to some AAA games, and my results were kinda hit or miss. For instance, Doom Eternal wouldn't work for me. It was giving me a VRAM warning, and I tried changing the virtual memory. I tried changing the VRAM allocation through the MyASUS software. I couldn't get this working. Hogwarts Legacy did work, but it was running like crap. I had the graphics set to low, and because we're on Intel, we can use XeSS upscaling, but it wasn't great. Only 23 FPS on average. So I went over to Ultra Performance FSR and that seemed to work better. I ended up getting around 32 FPS on average. However, I should mention that this is 3K resolution. That's 1800p. So even with FSR upscaling, that's still a lot of pixels to push. Ordinarily, you would lower the resolution of the game, but this game doesn't have resolution options. It just runs in borderless window. So you would have to muck about with the native desktop resolution to get better performance in this game. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was more or less playable and enjoyable. I just fired this up quick for a benchmark, but it ran well. This is medium settings, 1800p resolution, but with 50% res scale, and I was getting 30 FPS around there. And the same thing with Red Dead 2. This is a high and low settings mix, 1200p, but with 75% resolution scale, and it was running well. I got like 32 FPS on average, which is fine for me in a third-person game like this, especially if I'm playing with a controller, which I was. Nothing like unwinding after a hard day of product testing and benchmarking with a nice chill ride around the Wild West, making friends and seeing the beautiful sights along the way. In our modern world, it's hard to find a moment's peace. With our reliance on tech and constant notifications and always feeling like we need to upgrade to the latest and greatest thing, hard to quiet the mind and look inwards. It's hard to find Zen, is what I'm saying. And the Asus ZenBook isn't going to do much to help you there. I mean, it's a laptop. If you want to achieve enlightenment, you should go sit on a mountain somewhere. But if you don't give a crap about that stuff, then yeah, the ZenBook 14 OLED is a beautiful machine. It's slim and light. It's got basically the nicest OLED screen that I've ever seen. It's powerful. It's versatile. This isn't a gaming PC, but if you want to game on it with like lower spec games or lower the settings on AAA games, it'll get you by. It's not cheap. It's $1,400, and for that price, you can probably find something with more horsepower, if horsepower is the most important thing. But you do get a lot here for that price. Heck, the display alone is reason enough to consider it, not to mention the brand new Core 7 processor with integrated AI hardware for some reason. I don't think I would personally spend that on a non-gaming laptop, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't love this thing and really wish I could just freaking keep it. Oh, come on, Asus, don't tease me like this. Going back to my old laptop is going to be hard after this. If you want your own Asus ZenBook 14 OLED, there's a link in the thingy below. And that brings us to the end. I'm sorry if you expected to achieve nirvana by watching this review, but I hope you enjoyed seeing this thing. I really haven't done laptop reviews much at all, so let me know how I did, what you'd like to see in the future. If you want to see more of my videos, there will be a few that YouTube thinks that you'll enjoy pop it up on the screen in just a few moments, but that's it from me for today. I'm TechDweeb, thanks for watching, bye-bye!